Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you and your family are safe and well. My name is Diana Varnes, and I'm the programs lead for the Tom Love Innovation Hub at OU out of Norman, Oklahoma. Donna Miller, the CEO and co-founder of Purse Power, and I will be partnering together to deliver this program on a weekly basis going forward. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive change, and the Tom Love Innovation Hub is working to promote and expand innovation and entrepreneurism throughout the state of Oklahoma and the Heartland. I'm so excited to have DeShawn Spellman today. In addition to his current role as the Diversity Recruiting and Partnerships Manager with Lyft, DeShawn helped orchestrate numerous virtual meetings and events during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, he was in the background supporting this program for most of last year. Today on our program, DeShawn will be sharing his insights on creating extraordinary virtual events. I will review DeShawn's full bio in the introduction section right before the interview segment. We're in a meeting format today and we'll be taping the program. Videos for our shows are always available on the website at pursepower.com under the Let's Share the Journey tab. People have told us over and over how impressed they are with the quality of speakers we have on this show. So please go to pursepower.com to watch prior episodes. The link to register for each Friday show is on the website every Monday morning. The entrepreneurship programming, also known as Intent, Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship programming at the OU Innovation Hub, will be kicking off again in September. But until then, the iHub is hosting a joint workshop with the Oklahoma City Innovation District on August 25th from 11 a.m. to noon on how to create a pitch deck. More information can be found at okcinnovation.com/events. All right. So to begin, let me introduce DeShawn. DeShawn Spellman is currently the Diversity and Recruiting and Partnerships Manager at Lyft, a US-based Fortune 500 company. With nearly 15 years of working in higher ed, specifically with students from underserved and underrepresented communities, he believes his lifeblood is to help individuals reach their full potential. His previous work with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund afforded Mr. Spellman the opportunity to create positive outcomes and launch unique programming with brands such as Ally Financial, the National Basketball Association, Gucci, and Apple. DeShawn has also been a champion in helping to diversify Silicon Valley by his work with tech and social media giants Apple and Meta, formerly Facebook. His work in diversity and inclusion has helped to foster positive change and create access to top companies for students attending historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic institutions. Mr. Spellman is a proud alumnus of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, holding a bachelor's degree in business with a concentration in marketing. He also holds a master's degree in human service counseling from Liberty University. And Mr. Spellman is an advisor for several organizations, including Project ECHO, Young Black Leadership Alliance, Gucci Changemakers, and the Thurgood Marshall Foundation. Stuttering all over this one. Thurgood Marshall College Fund. All right, so welcome DeShawn. We're so happy to have you today. First, would you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you reach this place in your life and your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome everyone and thank you all for joining. Thank you for the bio. It's always interesting to hear about myself from someone else. So thank you so much. I guess I'll say that I transitioned into this for the virtual perspective, right? In events. When I was younger, I did a lot of on-site events. It's just something that I fell into. I like to say the right place at the right time, and someone pulled me in because they needed help because someone didn't show up for an event and they needed some help. So I was able to help them with that event. It was a major event. It was a fashion show actually in New York City, and someone didn't show up. I was going to the restroom and the guy looked at my name tag and said, "Hey, DeShawn." And I'm like, "Who are you?" I need you to, and then so he introduced himself. He said, "I need you to help me with something because someone didn't show up for this event and I really need help." So I helped him with that event. About 2 days after the event, we did a touch base, we followed up. About 2 days later, they were having a huge gala. And so he pulled me in to help him with that. And so that kind of went from that event to other events. And, you know, living in New York, there's so many connections that you can make with different individuals, especially in the entertainment space. And I heard Ms. Marsha mention that she worked in fashion, definitely the fashion space. I've done a lot of work with the Gucci Changemakers program in my former role at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And so events is something that I started to fall in love with doing. COVID happened and the need for virtual events really increased. And I started to get a lot of requests to say, hey, I need you to make my on-site event that we would normally do in New York or in DC. I need you to do this virtually, but make it look like all the glitz and glamour that we would normally have. And so, I gave it a shot and I was really able to be successful in doing that. I probably will say 2020 and 2021, I made the most money as an entrepreneur as I'd ever had, specifically with doing these virtual events.
Nice. That's awesome. So, well, in addition to doing those virtual events, you're the diversity recruiting and partnerships manager at Lyft. Could you tell us a little more about what a DEI role looks like and why this type of position is so important today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion roles can be really tough. It can be really emotional, right? And I say that because a lot of people, believe it or not, look at diversity and inclusion from the scale of black and white, but it's so much more than that. I'm a huge female ally, and I think that's one of the reasons why Donna and I mesh so well, is because of my passion for women's rights, my passion for all things inclusivity, and so. It's great work, but it can also be challenging work. And I say that because a lot of times we're having to respond to so many different situations that are happening. We had the Texas school shootings and we had to respond to that. We had recently Roe versus Wade, regardless of what your stance is, it could have been a huge blow to the female community, right? And so we're always having to support those things. But aside from the tough work, it's rewarding work when you're able to see women who've been out of the workforce connected to major companies through partnerships. They may have been out of the workforce for 5, 10 years, and we're able to find them jobs in tech spaces, or we're able to find them jobs in their field because they kept up with those skills. In addition to that, I'm also a huge advocate of supporting underrepresented students. And so those feelings as well. I'm a first generation college student, and I remember my first internship in New York City. No one in my family ever went to college. My parents didn't graduate from high school. And so having that feeling of being a first generation college student, going into this corporate space, I was interning at Bertelsmann. And so, doing that whole internship piece, never thinking that I would land a seat in Bertelsmann, let alone live in New York City for the summer. And so those types of things where you're able to connect students from those underrepresented communities who may be first generation college students to major companies out in Silicon Valley or New York City or wherever they may be, that's such a rewarding role.
That is awesome. I love hearing that. And I can't wait to touch base afterwards and talk more about all of that and see how we can connect together. So prior to joining Lyft, you helped Fortune 500 companies put on virtual meetings and events throughout the pandemic. Power was one of your clients. Would you describe your work in this area and tell us your tricks of the trade for creating extraordinary virtual meeting and events?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I will say is no event is alike. I think I've worked with Donna and Power for, prior to 2023, I would probably say almost 2 years. And, this event I look at this as a very small scale event in terms of, we come in, we know the structure. There's not too much that changes from week to week. When I was working with her on a weekly basis, we knew, what time to log in. We knew who the speakers were, all of the prep that Donna is amazing at prepping everyone for these type of things. And so we had all of that. There was very few times, if any, that I had to kind of figure out, okay, what's going to happen next? That's not always the case, right? Donna, I believe at that time was a one-woman show. So she was doing all of this. I'm sure she had some help, but she was doing a lot of this on her own. But then there are those larger companies that I've done events for, and it has not been as seamless as that. And so you're having to troubleshoot in the moment. You've had to, you're working with 6, 7 different people giving you various directives, and it can be a little challenging, but it's fun. And I love doing these type of things because or the virtual events, because I get to learn so much about so many companies or organizations or professions that I wasn't familiar with. I've done events for health services. I've done events for hospitals. I've done events for a group of Roman Catholic women. So, it's always rewarding to hear, and because everyone has, I've even done events for a group of atheists. And so it's always interesting to hear and learn different things. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy mostly about it. In terms of, you asked about tricks of the trade, I guess I'll say you just have to be prepared. You have to do as much planning, pick the minds and understand the vision of your clients as much as possible, so that you can make sure that you can execute a great event for them. And my whole thing was, I always wanted the events that I participated in or executed to look like it would look if we were in real life, on site, the fun, the energy, the professionalism. I wanted all of that to remain consistent when I transitioned from on-site events to these virtual events.
That's awesome. I can't wait to ask you more questions about that too, because I know myself and Bree often do a lot of conferences and virtual conferences and things like that. So I think that'll be fascinating to learn more about.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what are the pros and cons of doing in-person, hybrid, and virtual events?
Ooh, there are definitely pros and cons to all of them. Pros and cons for, I guess I'll start with on-site events because I've done those the most. Or the longest rather. Pros and cons of the on-site events, it's just things not showing up, things not arriving on time. There can be venue issues, there could be speaker issues, speaker flight delays. And so then you're just having to navigate through those moments. We used to have a thing with my old company that we would always say smile and pivot. And so anytime someone said, DeShawn, get ready to smile and pivot, I knew that something happened. And I'm going to have to, even though I don't know the next course of action, I'm going to have to act like I know the next course of action. And so I learned that I think I'm a master at smiling and pivoting, right? But those are some of the things that could happen, speakers, issues. I dealt with a lot of contracts, and I dealt with a lot of contracts. And so, something doesn't go according to what the contract states. And so then there's a whole issue with that, which can be not only just an issue in the moment, but it can also lead to legal issues as well. And so those are some of the things that I had to deal with in a virtual space though. The only thing I really worry about in the virtual space was two main things. Technology, like we were prepping for this call this morning and my Wi-Fi was going out. And so, quick thinking, what I need to do to make sure that this does not happen while we are actually live and in the moment. So connect hardwired to my router. I have had issues, especially during COVID, where storms come through. I have no router and I have no Wi-Fi. So what do I do then? Oh, DeShawn, connect to your hotspot on your phone to make sure that it happens. And so, those are some of the issues that I've had to deal with in a virtual space, as well as what we call Zoom bombing. Zoom bombing is a thing. I recently did an event maybe 2 months ago now for an organization out in California. This was my third year doing the event. And so because I've been helping them with the event for 3 years, they really didn't need me in the full capacity that they did before, because one of the things that I like to do is not only you to hire me to do your work, but I also want to show you what to do in the event that I'm not able to be here, or, what have you. And so I pretty much showed them the ropes for 2 years. Year 3, they said, well, we want you to just pop in for maybe an hour and, that's it. I said, okay, cool. I'm not going to charge you. I've worked with you all long enough to know that, how your events go. And so I did that. Well, the hour that I was there, we had this one guy going from conference room to conference room, just Zoom bombing. And we were already live in the moment. So I couldn't go back and change the settings in Zoom because it would have made everyone log out and had to log back in. So I'm literally bouncing around all day from room to room, kicking this guy out multiple times out of these rooms because he's just, being a not nice person, for lack of better words. And so those are some of the things that you really have to consider in the virtual environment. That was probably the only instance that I had with, a Zoom bomber. And I've done these events for a while. But aside from that, I think the virtual space, you have a little more control because, you're behind your computer and you're not having to be in this place and in this place and in this place. So you have a lot more control as to what's happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you done much in the way of hybrid events
You're
yet?
muted, Diana, or I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
I can, yep.
Okay. That's okay. Have you done much in the way of virtual events? Or I'm sorry, not virtual, hybrid events?
Hybrid events, I think I have done, I'm trying to think. I may have done one or two, not much in hybrid events, in the hybrid event space. However, I will be doing a hybrid event in next, I think it's September, I'm sorry. I'll be doing a hybrid event in California with an organization called Vermont Slauson. And so it's a pitch competition for, I think this time they're doing pitch competitions for the Latinx community. And so I'm going to already be out there and they wanted me to do something. I'll be at a hotel. Another thing, I don't like doing these Zoom events from a hotel. You just never know, or not necessarily Zoom events, but virtual events. You just never know the Wi-Fi, what happens, if the hotel is going to have Wi-Fi. And so I told them I'm already going to be out in California, so I can just, take a Lyft to the office space where you all will be, while you all will be on site. I'll be working in the background for those who are not there. So I have done hybrid events. Hybrid events are cool. There's so many moving pieces to hybrid events as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to them at all.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a few of those myself, and it's been tricky trying to figure all of that out. All right.
Yeah,
So what are some of your favorite tools and platforms, maybe even outside of Zoom?
Yeah. So there are so many now. I know first getting started, Zoom was my platform of choice. But there are so many other platforms. Zoom is pretty much this. This is what you're going to get unless you have like someone who's running what's called an OBS system on the back end, where we can put up lower thirds and put up, we call them tickers at the bottom, like the stock market tickers. Individuals can do that. But again, that requires some additional add-ons from Zoom. However, again, there are other platforms. I've used platforms, and this is a platform that has a Zoom integration called 6 Connects that I really, really like. It gives you that whole conference feel, but when it goes to like the live sessions, it's just a Zoom film with the border that's outlined there. Now there's this whole wave and move for the metaverse, which is pretty cool. And if you don't know what the metaverse is, it's kind of like it's augmented reality. As well, if you remember the game back, the computer game called The Sims, it's like you're in a live Sims game, but you can create your character, you can move around. For example, if I wanted to walk up and talk to Marsha, I can kind of move my little ticker person and go walk and talk to Marsha directly. We can have a one-on-one conversation if we're close enough without anybody hearing it. If we're a little further apart, we can kind of hear maybe 2 or 3 conversations at one time. And so the metaverse is becoming a really big thing. There's actually a platform now called Metaverse, which kind of gives you that metaverse feel. And again, it kind of puts you in that space where it brings you into an actual live conference environment, even though you're not there. And especially if you have a lot of companies now, they're issuing virtual reality like headsets so that their employees can literally be in the moment. So I think that those are pretty cool platforms as well. But when it comes to platforms, I always ask the question, what's your budget? Because you can pay a couple dollars like you would for a Zoom meeting, which is maybe a subscription for maybe $20-30 a month, to I've worked with platforms that were like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you do have some platforms that you do pay that much for, and quite honestly, you don't get a real huge return. There are bugs, there are major technical issues, there's crashing, and at the end of the day, you've paid $70,000 for a platform that doesn't work. And so, a lot of things, again, Zoom is my go-to platform because you can do so much in it, as well as, especially if you're providing any add-ons, and it's cost effective, right? But then there are other platforms that can, cost an astronomical amount depending, if you don't have the budget to sustain it.
Absolutely. And you're reminding me,
You're muted. I don't know, you're muted again, it sounds like.
how about now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, yeah, this mic is being weird today. Of course, technical problems. Of course, we're gonna have
Right.
those. But no, you're reminding me of some work because I helped put on virtual conferences all through COVID. And I remember we've got a Mozilla Firefox office here in Tulsa, and with some of our local conferences, we've been using some of the platforms like that where you all go into a virtual space, and yeah, it's like you're in a fun little room, and then you get to move around the room and go talk to different groups of people and things like that. And then we've utilized the same thing quite a bit with Code for America. And while it hasn't been quite the same as being in person, it's been really nice to be able to still be able to have some of those casual conversations and things like that. So I'm a big fan of it.
I was going to say that I did an event for Equifax, the credit reporting agency. And so one of the cool things that they did, which made it look so real, was, well, one, I went to the Equifax space in Atlanta, and they pre-recorded a lot of their content. So it's kind of like they had a studio, kind of like that whole talk show feel. They pre-recorded a lot of the content. So the content was pre-recorded, but if you're watching, you wouldn't have known it was pre-recorded. So then, I guess I'm telling the tricks of the trade, huh? So, but then what happened was, for the live Q&A portion, everyone who spoke, they had on this exact same thing that they wore in their video, and they were just like we are now. And so if Miss Lou had a question, she would just ask them, not knowing this was recorded a month ago, but it made it feel so real. And then they had that whole studio space. And so a lot of companies or organizations use that method as well, where they pre-record content, and then they have the live Q&A portions. I did an event for a organization called Afrotech, and it was the same format. I pre-recorded my information, I pre-recorded my session, and then during the live Q&A, I didn't have on the same thing because we were just chatting if individuals had questions, but it was that pre-recorded feel. And I think that's also a way to go as well, especially with a lot of these co-working spaces. And I will say now, because a lot of companies have transitioned from requiring their employees to be in the office all day, every day, to now we have so much space, how can we best utilize it? And so a lot of those companies, they're opening up their space, which in a lot of cases, a lot of their spaces they do have that studio space as well, where they were doing, because they, companies, if you think about these major tech companies, for example, they do a lot of recording. And so they have their own studio spaces. So now they're leasing that space out, or they're renting that space out, where individuals or entrepreneurs can come in, shoot or record in their space, and then, have their own virtual conference or their virtual event. And so I think that has been one of the positive things that has come out of this whole virtual event space, how you're able to really be creative in creating a lasting and memorable virtual event.
That is awesome. I love that so much. I can't wait to get you introduced to some people here in Tulsa, because I think some of that will be very beneficial here.
I love it.
So with these virtual events, especially hosting them Zoom or wherever, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people putting on? And do you have any tips on how to be more effective? And I know you talked about planning. I don't know if there's more specific.
So planning is definitely one. I've seen people, and I feel so sorry for them on the back end, where they're paying thousands of dollars for this event, and it's just not successful because their registration fee is too much, right? You're charging almost the same amount that you would charge for an in-person event in the virtual space. And so your attendance is super low. You've paid tens of thousands of dollars to put this event on, and you're not having a lot of people, there, because, even for me, when I would do these conferences, or when I look at sponsoring conferences for my company, I'm looking at how is, what's going to be the return on investment for me as a sponsor, to pay $20,000, $30,000 for this virtual event, where your on-site event was maybe $35,000, and we have a much lower population of attendees that have registered this year. And so I think that's one of the mistakes that companies or individuals make, is overextending themselves in that way. I guess I'll say another thing is that, last minute changes again, and you just understanding the major capabilities of what can and really can't be done in a virtual environment. And in space, it's a lot easier to smile and pivot on site than it is in a virtual space, because we're not really talking on the phone. For some events or conferences, you can't. I'm on the phone with them all day just to make sure that we're at the 2 hour mark. This is where we are. All right, let's get ready to transition. So that works. But again, it's not as easy to pivot in the virtual space as it would be on site. So those are some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head.
I think that's great. Something that was just occurring to me, with how much that you've worked with all these different organizations, have you seen much or had much experience with the marketing of the events? Do you have any ideas or suggestions on how to better market?
Yeah. So I don't really work from the marketing side, but I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually one of the points that I meant to mention in my last point. Marketing plays a huge role in making sure that your event is successful. And so, if you're having this major conference or major event, you have to make sure, and especially if you're going to be charging a lot of money for it, for attendees and registrants, and putting a lot of money into it, you have to make sure that you have the marketing dollar to support what you're doing, because you don't want to have an event that you've invested $50,000 for, and 100 people show up and you've only made $2,500, right? It just does not make good business sense. And so you have to make sure that you have a team or an agency that is really pushing your event, marketing it out. I'm a huge advocate of hiring freelancers. Donna gave me a shot about 2 years ago, but freelancers, interns, there are a lot of students who are looking to build portfolios that would do some of this stuff for free. Looking to build, there's this one kid that I can think of here in Atlanta. He was just trying to get his foot in the door in the marketing space. And so I gave him work to do, never charged me, did the work, was able to build a portfolio, did a lot of the social media stuff that I needed done. And now he's working for a major marketing architectural firm here in Atlanta, just by using that as his experience. And so marketing has to play a huge portion in making sure that your events are successful. Again, if you cannot find it or you don't have the budget to pay for it, go find a student, find someone who is hungry. That's how I got my start. I did like those events that I've done award shows. I've done tours that I didn't charge for, because I wanted the experience. And so now that I'm at a place where, I have all of this experience, I can add a price to my experience, right? I don't have to come in and do events for free. Granted, there are organizations where I'm looking at like, yeah, I'm not charging you for that. Let's just make this happen. I love the mission. I love the vision. I love the goal. So let's just make this happen. But again, just marketing is definitely key.
I love it. Sounds exactly like how I've gotten to where I'm at now, doing the exact same thing. I've done a lot of volunteer work just to try to get into the door.
Yeah.
So, and this is something Donna and I were talking about last week when she interviewed me. When you're trying to go and you've done all of this work for free, how have you decided what you're going to start charging and starting to actually monetize all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things, I try to be very integral. That's one thing. And I think that's one of the things. I try to keep a good reputation and a good name. And so that's one of the things that I that I hold myself accountable to. And so I don't think that there has ever been a time where someone said, hey, I don't have a set budget. Let me put that out there. If someone says, hey, this is my budget, can we make this happen? 9 times out of 10, if I have the availability, I don't have any schedule conflicts, I'm going to make it happen within their budget. And now that's just me, because this work is fun, and I said I always get something out of it, out of the work that I do in the virtual space. And then if it's something that's really astronomical and they don't really have the budget for it, I start to talk to them, how can we scale back or how can we scale down? And that has been successful as well. But I think of myself to be very affordable. I know I was working with this organization out of California, and I told them, typically I charge maybe $50 an hour, just depending on for the scope of what they wanted. And she said, how do you live off of that? Like, we're talking with people and they're charging thousands of dollars an hour. And so I told her it's fun work. It's kind of like work that I know how to do really well, that I enjoy doing. And I also have other means of income. So I don't have a clear-cut answer to that aside from let's just talk, see what you want to do, what your budget is, and we'll figure out how to make it happen.
I love it. That makes me feel better because that's exactly how I've approached it. And Same thing, I've got other revenue streams coming in, so I don't feel like I have to worry too much about it. I love what I do and I want to make it work. So, and I want to see other people succeed. I love it. So you run a business in addition to your day job. Tell us about your entrepreneurial journey and what have been some of your highs and lows, and how do you keep yourself on track when you face inevitable challenges?
Right. So for me, entrepreneurial journey, I guess I never looked at myself. I don't look at myself as more so an entrepreneur, but I look at myself more so of an entrepreneur. And so I have an entrepreneurial mindset, and I like to basically take my entrepreneurial mindset to work within companies and help build an organization from inside out. However, I do understand that there's an entrepreneurial component attached to what I'm doing with these virtual events that I'm working with. And so I was that kid, a lot of kids are selling lemonade, and a lot of kids are selling lemonade on the corner. As a matter of fact, in my neighborhood Monday, we had these little kids that were doing lemonade for book bags. And so you buy lemonade, they use the money to purchase book bags for less fortunate kids. And so I was never the lemonade stand kid, but I was the garage sale kid. And I wanted my grandma to have a garage sale every weekend so that I could sell my toys or sell my clothes that were too small so that I can make some money. And so I guess I'll say it started there. And then as I started to get more involved with events and planning and, tours and all of that, I started to say, hey, I don't necessarily have to do this for a major company. I can try doing this on my own. And people, again, gave me shots. I was able to do some really major events and I didn't charge. And so that kind of gave me that experience. And so the flip side of that, though, as an entrepreneur, as you know, it has its highs and lows. So when I was living in New York, I was doing all of these events at the beginning of the year. And then when the summer rolled around, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to pay my $1,300 rent in my 1-bedroom apartment where I can lay in my bed and touch both of my walls, right? So I'm having to figure that out. And so that's when I really stepped back into the corporate arena. And balancing it out is a question that you ask, and it all just boils down to really having to make sure that you're strategizing and planning and holding yourself accountable to the what must happens, right? Right now, because I do have a full-time role, I don't do as many virtual events as I had in the past 2 years because things with my company have picked up, or I transitioned to a new role. So things have not been as slow as they were previously. And so I probably do maybe 1 or 2 virtual events a month, as opposed to while I was doing maybe sometimes 3 or 4 in a week during COVID. And so it's really having to figure out, scheduling when I'm available. And I think one of the things that I also realized is that during COVID, a lot of people were able to really spend time with their families. And I was able to spend time with my family because my family, my wife works from home, my son was home from school, but I was always doing an event. Every weekend I was doing an event. And so I had to take a step back and say, I'm doing events every weekend and I'm not really having time for my family. And so now I'm very selective about what I'll do on the weekends, if anything, because I want to make sure that I do have that balance, work-life balance as well.
I agree. That's very important. That's something that
you went out.
Okay.
I think it's when you come off of mute. Yep, there we go.
Yeah, I've been trying to come off of mute when I hear you starting to wind up or finish up. So your work in diversity and inclusion has helped to foster positive change for students attending historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic institutions. What are you working to accomplish, and what can we do to support you?
So, and forgive me, I've been battling an upper respiratory infection for the last week, so I'm a little congested here. But yeah, so earlier I stated I am a champion for all things diversity, right? Women's rights, persons with disability, whatever, whatever. And so as a previous HBCU alum, I think it's super important to help those individuals, that may not have the support needed and necessary to really be successful. A lot of my work that I've done has been, aside from the whole virtual event entrepreneurship space, helping to diversify Silicon Valley. And so what does that look like? Helping to diversify the tech space, and what does that look like? And so much of my work, I have worked with students from historically Black colleges and universities, and I'm now also working with students from Hispanic serving institutions, making sure that they get a chance, right? A fair shot, an opportunity, the skills necessary to be successful once they step into the tech world, or once they step into a corporate environment, and how can we do that? A lot of that comes along with coaching, training, and development, skills training, essential skills training, or what my career coach describes them as those power skills. How do you step into an environment? And I'll give an example. So when I was younger, I tell people all the time, I am African American, I'm Black. I grew up in a Black family. I went to a predominantly Black high school, but when I went to New York, I was in a predominantly white environment. And so I had to learn how to maneuver through that environment, because I didn't always feel the most comfortable. I had to deal with imposter syndrome, right? Where I felt like I just did not know what my non-Black counterparts knew. And so I had to deal with all of that. And so just making sure that students that may not be from a PWI or predominantly white institution, or a Hispanic student or a Black student, all feels like they have the skills, especially if they've gone through the courses, they've done the coursework, they've graduated with a great GPA, making sure that they feel like they can really be successful. And I'll be honest, a lot of times, and people may disagree with me for saying this, but a lot of times it's not them, it's you, and it's not what they're thinking about you, it's what you're thinking that they're thinking about you, when they're not thinking that about you at all, right? They just want to make sure that you can come in, kick butt, do the job, but it's just I'm not used to this, I'm not familiar with this, this is something that's new to me. It's kind of like that thing where you go into, I have my class reunion coming up, and it's like going into my class reunion, not knowing what to expect, who's doing what, and am I at the bottom of the totem pole, or am I at the top of the totem pole, or is still is the most popular guy still the most popular guy, or the most popular female still the most popular, so it's just those things where other people probably aren't even thinking about, but you're thinking about it. And so, just making individuals feel comfortable, and making sure that they have the skills and accessibility. I think access to these different things is really key. I was just at a disabilities conference about 3 weeks ago, and it was amazing just how much I did not know about about individuals with disabilities, and some of the challenges that they're having. And they're coming up to me saying, hey, this is how you all can improve your product. This is what you all can do to be more accessible to my group. And so it was just eye-opening, and just seeing someone who is totally blind just maneuver through the hotel as if they had perfect vision, right? Those are some of the things that are eye-opening. And so when it comes to looking at, students from historically Black college or Hispanic serving institutions, or individuals with disabilities, there's always something that we can learn from each other. And so as much as I can push individuals to reach their full potential, I'm going to do that. I think you asked your second part of that question was how can you help with that, right? And so I think what I would say to that is just become knowledgeable, right? I hear people say a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, and that is so true. And so for those things that I don't know, for example, with the individual with disability community, I started to read up on some of the things and some of the things that I can do to be more inclusive to that particular demographic or that community. And so, always extend a helping hand to individuals, whether they are from historically Black colleges or predominantly white institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, just to make sure that we all get a fair shot, that everybody gets a fair shot. I think that this world that we live in is great. But I think a part of that is just making sure that everyone gets a fair chance to flourish and to bloom, especially those that really, really want a shot to be successful and a shot to be great.
I absolutely completely agree. And one of my favorite things to do is invite people to go get coffee so I can learn more about them and find out what do I have access to that maybe they don't, so I can make those introductions.
Yeah.
And things like that. Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing that that has really been helpful for me, and I've gotten bad about this over the past month because I've literally been traveling for the past 4 weeks, which is probably why I have a respiratory infection, because I've just been going from East Coast to the West Coast and Central, so all of those places. But one of the things I try to do is I use LinkedIn a lot, especially in my role now. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests, and I love coffee chats. And so what I try to do is just make myself available to just random, mostly students. I will say I'm a little more biased to students, and it does not have to be a HBCU, HSI student. It can be a student from a PWI who wants to learn more about the tech space that I'm setting aside time for. I try to do that on Fridays, that I'm just making time available just to talk to people and to help students to kind of get to that next level and into spaces that they've not been able to get into. And so I love the coffee chat idea. It's one of the things that I also encourage my interns to do too, coffee chats.
All right. So given everything we've discussed, what are the top 3 actions you would like our audience to take after leaving this call?
Top 3 actions I would like the audience to take. So first and foremost, I guess this is more so from a personal level. Seek out someone to mentor, right? If you're not already doing, and I'm sure all of you probably already have mentees that you're mentoring, but someone that you can mentor, someone that you can, show the ropes, whatever your expertise is. Like, and I keep calling Miss Marshall because I love the fashion space, right? And so I think that is a space where, especially in the HBCU, HSI collegiate space, there's not a lot of focus on fashion careers or fashion majors. And so, someone who may reach out to you on LinkedIn, kind of like talk to them about the tricks and tips of the fashion space, and just kind of mentoring. I remember Miss Kerr saying that she ran a nonprofit. So I've come from years of working at a nonprofit, Thurgood Marshall College Fund, where I know all the hard work that goes into a nonprofit. And so, someone who's looking to work in a nonprofit, kind of like take them up under your wing and show them the ropes of how to make your nonprofit successful, or even being successful in working at a nonprofit. So that would be one. 2 is making sure whatever you do and execute, do it with excellence, regardless of the budget, regardless of how many people are showing up, regardless of the difficulties that you've had with the client in setting up the event, because that can be a major factor as well. And just making sure that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that everyone has had a successful experience, and always consider that your name is on the line too, right? And so if this event goes crappy, DeShawn was the person to produce this Zoom event, or DeShawn was the Zoom tech person behind the scenes, and the event didn't go well, right? That's not gonna do much for your business. And so make sure that you did everything with excellence. And I guess the last thing I would say, love what you do, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever space, whatever profession, love it and give it your all. So those will probably be my top 3.
Awesome. I love it so much. So let's open it up. Does anybody who has a question that you'd like to ask DeShawn? Or any comments, observations? Not everybody jump in at once. Well, we'll let them gather thoughts and questions. Do you have any extra thoughts that you want to share? Anything we haven't covered that you'd like to discuss?
Extra thoughts, I guess other thing I'll say is that you have to be willing to kind of change with the times, right? And maneuver and navigate. I know earlier coming into this whole virtual conference space, most people were doing freeconferencecalls.com, and then there was that whole WebEx movement. And now as things are moving, I just encourage you to kind of move along with the times. Now it seems like things are transitioning into the whole metaverse space. And so if you don't know much about it, go and read up on it. I can drop it. It's called Metaverse. There you go. So Metaverse, I just dropped it in the chat, as well as looking at some of those new platforms that are out there, talking about, you know, the space of virtual events and conferences and events and what you can do to make your event successful. Also look at other people's events that they've had virtually. Some people have had some really cool virtual events, done some really cool things virtually that I think we could all benefit from. And so times are changing, things are moving, technology is steadily, rapidly increasing and changing by the minute. And so just make sure that you always stay up on that. And even if you don't feel like I want to learn all of this, I have my career coach, and she's a mentor as well. She's much older than me in age, but she says, hey, if I don't want to learn this, I know I can just call you to learn it, and then we can just talk through it. So, you know, if you don't want to learn it, get you an intern, get you a mentee that can kind of learn and understand. I mean, she's called me for a number of things, from how to set up her computer to how to create her Zoom profile to even, you know, how to make her text larger on her phone. So, you know, just people are there to help you. People are there to help you. I like to think that this world is more good than it is bad. And this, you know, society is so much, you know, more, you have a lot more people that want to do well and want to help you than those that don't. But it just seems as though that, and this is not Purse Power endorsed, but it just seems as though that the bad things are exemplified more than those great hearted people that are out there. So people are out there and willing and wanting to help you.
Absolutely. We do have one question from Donna. How do you decide which format to have your events in, whether it's live, hybrid, or virtual?
Yeah, so a lot of that is, a lot of times, quite honestly, that clients and partners will come to me and ask, or they already have a platform in mind, and they'll say, hey, do you know this platform? And if I do, I mean, there have been platforms that I just have not recommended. I remember, I think I told you that there was one platform in particular that they paid about maybe $75,000, $80,000 for it, and it was a bad platform. And so then I had another client to say, hey, what about this platform? And I said, my honest thoughts, absolutely not. They're overpriced. The platform is not good. If you're not, you know, don't have great Wi-Fi, streaming in from a laptop, you know, it's not going to be good for your audience. If they're on a phone, or if they're using an iPad or a tablet, forget about it, you know? And so again, most of it is based off of what I've used before. A lot of clients come to me asking me, do I know this particular platform? And if I do, you know, I'll tell them, yeah. If I don't, I'll go and do my research on the platform. And what you'll find is a lot of platforms are very similar. Like now, Zoom was that platform. Now WebEx is kind of looking more and more like Zoom. So, you know, they're spying on each other, figuring out why people are maybe leaving their platform to go to another, and what they can do to make things a lot easier. User experience is always a great thing to consider. How easy is this for the people that are going to be attending your conference or your event to use this particular platform?
Absolutely wonderful. Before we close out, do we have?
Oh, you're muted again.
Okay, how about now?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so before we end everything out, do we have any questions?
I see one from Brianna. She's asking, would love to see some of the other tools and resources mentioned that you personally use too. Yeah, I'll see if I can drop those in here. What I'll do is I'll drop the links in. Again, some of these can be pretty costly, but I'm gonna only drop in the ones that I think would, you know, be really useful to you all.
Thank you.
Let's see.
And we'll be typing those, putting those in
Go ahead.
there. Next week, we are going to have Vicki Wilkerson with Salesforce. On the 19th, we're going to have Cordula Buss, and on the 26th, we'll have our monthly networking session.
Cool.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I'll also save some of these and have them available if anybody wants them later. All right, so Purse Power, the OU Innovation Hub, and McLaren Cares are partnering to implement a new program designed to help underrepresented people to have technology careers. If you could absorb a class of 10 to 25 technology students, please contact us. If you have an interest in supporting this program, please go to Let's Share the Journey, a page on our website, and buy us a cup of coffee. buymeacupofcoffee.com/pursepower. And then please like and share on our social media pages and be sure to tell your friends. And thank you so much for attending today. Remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. And we'll see you next Friday at 10 o'clock Central. And thank you, DeShawn, so much for being here. This was a lovely conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
No problem at all. Thank you all so much for joining.
Appreciate
Have a good
you.
one.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Luke.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Anne.